since it looks like it's going to be a mainstay at EVO events from now on, in 2020 they announced the MVC2 Invitational of Champions, but it got me thinking, since they announced this year, I guess they went back on it. Maybe since the Sony deal went through, there might have been difficulties, I guess, with MVC2, or maybe they just wanted to try just to do open MVC3 or something. But with UMVC3 being added as the kind of like throwback game, it got me thinking about what other options are there for that spot looking forward. The thing is, there's probably some difficulties or some rules that I just don't know. I would assume it probably needs to have had an official release on Steam or a modern Sony console. I would assume. I don't actually know, though. After the exhibition last year, I don't know if I want Street Fighter 4, but it's probably a good option. It's probably just easy to do, right? So I'm thinking Street Fighter 4 is probably a good one. Third Strike is probably an easy one. Plus R, I would imagine, is a little bit lower priority, but it would make sense to be one, right? I want to say games like CVS 2 and Marvel 2 are probably in a more difficult spot, just because they haven't had, we're looking at 2 console generations where they haven't had a re-release or a version of the game where, people would like to play on them. I don't know. The exhibitions they ran last year were Street Fighter 4, Tekken 5 DR, Alpha 2, and I want to say there was one more, but it definitely felt like the Alpha 2 one was maybe the most, the highest quality, I'll say. At least it felt that way in my opinion. It seems like a good way to throw a bone to some of the more retro games that have really active communities recently, I think, though. You want to think about games that also have modern re-releases on modern platforms or Steam, I guess. Basically, what I'm saying is Street Fighter games beyond 4 definitely felt like they were part of a generation where there's a sense of maybe pressure or expectations that you just gravitate towards the next title. Whereas before Street Fighter 3, you don't really have that as much, Can't imagine Street Fighter Cross Tekken. I can't imagine. It's hard for me to see Street Fighter Cross Tekken or Street Fighter 4 and 5 having as hardcore or driven communities for them now as opposed to when they were new. It's a different feeling compared to Third Strike community or the Vampire guys or something like that, Tekken also falls into that category too, where it's not there's a big community of people who are running competitive Tag 1 on a regular basis, competitive Tag 2, competitive 5DR on a regular basis like that, right? It's kind of something to think about too, just because of kind of how the games and communities have shifted. It's especially a thing, I think, the past 14 years. For example, right now, you got 6 coming out, you got 5. There aren't really people aren't playing 4 right now. 5 years from now, is someone going to run a Street Fighter 5 tournament? Is there going to be demand for that? I feel like there won't be. And it's for a lot of different reasons, I just think with the way stuff has gone, especially if the games have competitive infrastructure built around them, there's definitely more of an expectation for you to just move on to the next title. Especially, for players who are competing for, major tours and are a part of whatever, organizations or something like that. If they're, on contract, there is kind of the expectation that you're supposed to be competing in the newest, biggest game. You find that it's not as big a deal for games pre-2009. You got to think if you wanted something like what you're dealing with UMVC 3. I feel like if you're looking at a game with community activity and stuff like that on that same kind of level, it's man, the list of games that you think at first and then the reality, there's not that many games on that level, Especially for some of those older games, I think visibility is kind of a big deal. There's multiple factors that contribute to, I think, the health of some of those older titles. Marvel, for example, looking at this year's lineup, I think TNS kind of contributed a great deal towards that, just because they're constantly running events that people are constantly entering. You got people that are streaming them that from their perspective, and they do nasty shit too, man. They're booting up the mods. They got these mods with characters that people made and shit like that. It's super nasty. They're doing Parsec net play tournaments and shit like that. It's not just about raw numbers in the Fightcade lobby or something like that. It's about people that are, I think, primarily driving content around those numbers and with events and stuff like that. That all contributes to, I think, how some of those retro titles are perceived in terms of community health. You know, for example, like Plus R is really active, I think, in North America and Europe. Third Strike, of course, you know, they have something like Jazzy Circuit to kind of build around. Not every older game has that. I'd like to see more retro communities kind of try to make something, especially there's a lot of games with a lot of players, but they just don't have anything to like build around, or like kind of like a community event or something like that to use as a lightning rod. You know, you need people that are willing to just boot up the game and just like stream it or make a video on it or something like that, but you also need people that are willing to run events that can get more people that potentially would do that, you know? Hey, if there's any games that you think would be hype for, or would be cool to see on the big stage at that throwback game slot, talk to me in the comments below. I'll see what you guys got to say.